Greetings again, my fellow nerdologists. Ambassador Kosh, coming at you with a brand new video. And today we're going to continue our 1980s retrospective, and we're going to be covering, honestly, I know I say this very often, this is a favorite of mine, and it's kind of an obscure one, and it kind of isn't. And I don't know if y'all can see it. There we go. Douglas Adams, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. For those of you who follow me on Twitter, that's what the 42 means. And we will be discussing both the original BBC production, and we will go a little bit into the remake that was done with, what was his name? Martin Freeman. For those of you who don't know Martin Freeman, he appears in the Hobbit movies, and he was also in Black Panther, and he was also in Captain America Civil War. But I first heard about Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy way back in the day, everything when PBS was on the air, public broadcast station, everything in my hometown. And this was one of the big shows that they broadcasted during one of their pledge drives or whatever. I eventually actually found a copy of Hitchhiker's Guide, the book, and everything at a secondhand bookstore, media store, as I've called them before. And I was like, I read it, and I reread it, and I learned the guy who wrote them, Douglas Adams, had done a whole slew of them, and they were all kind of continuous. And what we have with the Hitchhiker's Guide, as one of my classmates called it, the sci-fi Bible. And that's entirely an inaccurate explanation of the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, but it's a very interesting story in and of itself, and just within the TV miniseries that the BBC did. This one, I recommend if y'all can find this. You can find it on Amazon. I actually got this copy at Barnes & Noble, which I paid through the nose for. But I highly recommend this. It is a great show. It's got a lot of great humor. It's British humor, but if you have an appreciation for it and an ear for it, you will laugh your head off. It's kind of like in the same vein as My Python and all the movies and TV shows that they did throughout the years. But the basic story of The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy is within the TV adaptation that the BBC did. You have this fellow by the name of Arthur Dent, and he's just your regular run-of-the-mill average Joe nobody, honestly. And he comes to find out that from a friend of his who actually is a alien from another planet, from another galaxy, or another, I think it's another planet, let's just say that. And the guy's name is Ford Perfect. And this Ford Perfect guy, turns out that he is, in fact, a writer, a contributor for the Hitchhiker's Guide. And he came to Earth to study the dominant species. And he thought the dominant species, strangely enough, was cars, not people. But the show itself, like I said, it's loaded with British humor. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I myself have a great love and appreciation of British humor. And even if you don't, there's enough in there to carry you along. You will sit there laughing your head off saying, what the heck is going on here? Because this show starts at 0 and it shoots right up to 60 and past it. And it is a ride and a half. I'll kind of give you a basic rundown of the baseline story that they do in the BBC TV show or miniseries, because it actually is a miniseries, and each episode I think is like maybe 15 minutes long a piece. Maybe more than that. The whole runtime of it I think is like 4 hours or more, give or take. But you'll barely notice the time pass because you're sitting there and you're watching these two guys and they're going through all these crazy situations. And Arthur Dent is just like completely out of his element half the time, and he just barely escapes either by help of the people that he's with or by his own sheer dumb luck. And the basic gist of the story is this race of aliens has come to Earth to basically demolish it. And the race is called Vogons. And they're not evil, they're not malicious. As the Hitchhiker's Guide calls them, they're very stuffy, very officious, very bound by the rules. They have very little imagination or creativity. And one of the reasons and one of the offshoots of this lack of creativity is they write like the second or third worst poetry in the entire galaxy. As the guide itself says, during a reading of Vogon poetry, or no, it was another race's poetry, several people died of internal hemorrhaging, and another person chewed their own arm off to keep from going crazy themselves. And that's just an example of this overboard, really wacky, bizarre humor that's in this show and in the book. Because if you ever, like I said, if you ever have a chance to get your hands on a copy of the Hitchhiker's Guide, and even if you're able to get your hands on a copy of the full compendium of the Hitchhiker's Guide, I think there's 2 or 3 other books. One is So Long and Thanks for All the Fish, the restaurant at the end of the universe, and I think there's one other book, but I can't think of it off the top of my head. But basically, what happens is Ford Perfect tells Arthur Dent, "Your world's going to be destroyed. It's going to be blown sky high." And he's like, "The only thing I can do is save you because you saved me from being run over by a car." Something completely arbitrary, completely something random. But Ford feels like Dent did him a good turn. He's going to do him a good turn in return. And they obviously get off Earth, and they're beamed up into a Vogon ship, and they end up face to face with the captain of the ship. They're strapped onto these big slabs with oversized rubber bands, essentially, and they're forced to listen to Vogon poetry. And Ford's going kind of wonky and everything because of it, because he's actually heard Vogon poetry before. But Dent is trying to save him and Ford's skin. In his own way, he kind of does. He gets them loose, gets them off the slabs, gets them in, and they get shoved into a airlock or something and flushed into the vacuum of space. And once again, by sheer dumb luck, this other ship comes along called the Heart of Gold. That's this new form of has this what they call an improbability drive, and it kind of takes you through every possibility of probability in the galaxy and brings you to where you want to come, more or less. And the ship comes, and you've got these other 2 characters on it. This guy by the name of Zepha Beeblebrox, and actually a girl that Arthur met at a party on Earth, and named Trillian, or I think her name was Trisha McMillan. And they just happen to stumble across Ford and Arthur, and they get beamed onto, or not so much beamed, but they get teleported into the ship because the ship picks them up just by sheer dumb luck. And the quirky thing is, Beeblebrox has actually stolen this ship, and for some dumb reason, he's actually president of the galaxy. But the thing is, the title of president of the galaxy means absolutely nothing. It's more of a diversion more than anything, and there's another whole other government running the whole galaxy or overseeing it or what have you. And it's nuts. The show is off the wall nuts. It's kind of hard to distill it down or anything except for giving you the basic storyline, because you actually have to watch it. And this is one time I'm going to tell y'all, find the TV show. Now, I'm not saying the movie isn't good. The movie's good, but they kind of switch things around a little bit. They kind of make it of a rom com between Trisha McMillan and Arthur Dent and everything, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. But I think it kind of skews away from the real story of The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, which you get a much better idea of what's presented in the book through the BBC television show. I do suggest watching both. I do periodically. Now, obviously, the remake that they did came out in the 2000s. Look, this is why we have stuff right here. Hitchhiker Guide. When the heck did this thing come out? Come on, work with me here. Work with me here, please. When did this stupid thing come out? Oh, here we go. The Blu-ray release came out in 2012, so figure, I want to say 2010, 2011 is when it came out in theaters. And as I mentioned, it didn't really do that well at the box office, which kind of bummed me out because I went and saw it in theater and I thought it was great. I thought it was a blast. But again, as with so many things, comedy is subjective. And I don't think people who remember the BBC television show, either they heard about the movie and didn't particularly care for it, but at the same time, they wanted to give it a shot, but they were like, "This isn't exactly what I remember," and they kind of just forgot about it and just kept to the BBC show, which there's no harm in it. I honestly see value in both versions and everything because you do get. I think one of the big things about the movie with Martin Freeman and actually Zoe Deschanel, the movie had a really good cast. You had, like I said, Martin Freeman. You had Zoe Deschanel. You had Mos Def. You had John Malkovich actually makes a cameo in this. Sam Rockwell is in this. Warwick Davis actually plays the part of Marvin. But here's the cool thing: Alan Rickman, may he rest in peace, be resting in peace, actually does the voice of Marvin, and it's perfect. It's absolutely perfect. He does such a great job. He has obviously Alan Rickman was British, and he had a good grasp of that dry British humor, and you just hear it come out of every line that he speaks as Marvin. But getting back to the BBC TV show, um, you have another version of Marvin. And here's the neat thing: this is an Easter egg for those that did watch the BBC television show. There's one scene in the movie, the American-made movie. You see the robot version of Marvin from the BBC television show in the movie. And I thought that was just kind of a nice wink and a nod back to those who remember the BBC TV show, and just kind of, it might have been some fan service, but it wasn't overdone. It was just kind of a cute little thing they did. But what ends up happening in the TV show, the BBC TV show, is Arthur and Ford, they go on all these wacky adventures with Zaphod Beeblebrox and Trillian, and they eventually actually get separated on this ship, and it turns out the ship is being sent somehow or another. Ford and Dent get sent back in time, and they're on the ship that's headed towards prehistoric Earth. And the ship is full of people that are like middlemen. You've got hairdressers and bureaucrats of all sorts, and telephone repairmen, TV repairmen, and basically what one race had done was they put all these people that they felt were unnecessary in their society on this ship, shot it out into space, and it just happens to be going towards prehistoric Earth. And eventually the ship does crash land, but all the people on the ship are just going about gibbering and worrying about minutia and everything, and they're actually stifling the development of prehistoric man. And essentially what you see happen is the Ford and Arthur just walk off into the woods, and they're like, "Well, we can't really do anything here," and that's where the TV show ends. It just stops right there. I know I've skipped over a whole bunch of stuff in the TV show, but honestly, I almost feel like I'd be robbing you all of a great experience. So, what I suggest very highly, if you have the time and the means, find you a copy of the original BBC Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy because it's nuts, but it's a good nuts. It's off the wall, crazy, ridiculous situations. It's almost like it's almost like Seinfeld in space and everything. And there's actually, I'll tell you one more story point and everything, and then we're gonna wrap this puppy up. It turns out within the story of the first Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, you learn that there is this computer that has been around for millions and billions of years that was built by this race of interdimensional, pan-dimensional beings. And this race and everything wants to um, discover the ultimate question. And they build this computer called Deep Thought to calculate the ultimate question, or rather, the ultimate answer. And the question that they have is, what is the answer to life, the universe, and everything? And Deep Thought tells them to come back in several 100 million years or whatever, and the computer will give them the answer. Well, they end up doing it, and the computer's like, "Are you really sure you want me to tell you the answer?" And they're like, "Yes, give us the answer. We want to know. This is why we built you in the first place. Tell us, tell us, tell us." And Deep Thought is like, "Okay, I warned you." And the computer says the answer to life, the universe, and everything is 42. 42, and everybody's like, "What the heck is this? 42?" And Deep Thought's like, "Guys, hold your horses. You asked me for the ultimate answer, but without the proper question, I can't give you the proper answer." And they're like, "Well, then give us the question." The computer's like, "I can't because I'm not complex enough to calculate the question, to formulate it. But I have commissioned a race of aliens called the Magrathians to build this supercomputer." And Deep Thought tells two of the leaders of this race that they will be sent down into the computer and everything, and they will be part of the operational program. But here's the kicker, and this is a twist. I would say this is even a bigger twist than, say, the twist in Sixth Sense, or no, let's just use that one for now. It turns out this computer is not another computer; it is a planet. And it's not just any planet, and y'all might know where I'm going with this, even if you're not familiar with the show. The computer that Deep Thought commissions to calculate the ultimate question is, in fact, planet Earth. The kooky thing about Douglas Adams and everything, and I respect him as a writer even in light of this, is in fact that he was actually, and I hope I'm not misrepresenting him here, he was actually an atheist. He did not have any religious belief. And this was kind of his way of not so much throwing shade at the Christian faith or anything, but just presenting his own take on how the universe, and in particular Earth and life on Earth, came to be. And I can appreciate the humor because essentially you have a pair of mice commission the creation of this computer, and this computer commissioned the creation of a planet to formulate the ultimate question to the meaning of life. So, But anyway, again, I say, if you've never seen Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, I highly recommend it. It is a great piece of pop culture from the 80s. And I'm pretty sure, let me double check here. Let's see. Yep, 1981. So yeah, we're well within the 80s. We're actually a year in, roughly. But all that being said, I hope y'all have enjoyed this. I know I'm enjoying these. And as always, and I know I forgot to say this in my video on Ambassador Delenn, like, share, subscribe, and by all means, comment below. Um, I don't normally put video links for these 80s videos because I don't know if I'll be tripping on any copyright law in particular. In this case, means it's something from the BBC and not from us specifically. But honestly, if you punch in best bits from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, or if you, and I would suggest prefacing those searches with the BBC, because otherwise you may come up with stuff from the movie. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, because the movie itself is very entertaining, and you can find it cheap just about anywhere. Um, but anyway, like I said, I don't know if I'll be trampling on any BBC toes, so I will not put um, clips down in the description. But anyway, enjoy. I hope y'all enjoyed this. I know I did, as I've said before. And until next time, my fellow neurologists, as our friend Ambassador Kosh says, I have always been here. 42. Talk to you later.